we should be live. Let me pull it up on my phone, make sure we all look nice and sexy, but we got the week 1 slate coming up.
Yeah, I don't even think you're going to pull that up on your phone. I think that people just know, obviously, right?
Well, I have to know.
I guess that wasn't funny. I don't know. It is what it is. We can keep going.
You know what? Get off my show.
Got a lot of crickets on that joke.
John, do you have the podcast going live?
Yep, we're good to go.
All right. Let's see. We've got week 1. I pulled up the lines on my bookie, but I mean, you can do I literally just want to look at the lines because that's one of the most useful ways to start off any slate for me. Where's your guys' leaping off point?
John, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I always look at lines first. I actually use Fantasy Labs just because I like to see what percentage of tickets are on each team. It's a super quick way to identify sharp money or any type of line movement, reverse line movement. So I always use them as a starting point, and then sort of just go from there.
I have Labs pulled up my other Google or behind the Google Hangout window. That's the one I use too.
I get Action Network out. It's good. We're just promoting another site.
That's why I didn't have it up. But
I mean, if you got to plug somebody.
How many Millie Makers do they have on their staff?
Huh?
How many Millie Maker winners do they have on their staff over at Labs?
I have no idea.
I'm gonna probably 0. Watch, they have all. No,
CSU might be. I think CSU is right.
Does he?
No, not a big one.
Yeah, baseball. He won
he won the
baseball.
FBWC, I think, right?
But I mean, let's talk about week 1, bro. It's here. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to roll too. Kyle, you're leading us off, bro. You're the guy here.
All right, let's get into it.
Most about every fucking DFS podcast, just talk for 15 minutes.
You're right. I do actually hate to hear you guys both talk. So Green Bay, Chicago Bears. This will be our showdown slate. We've got Green Bay +3.
Wait, we're not talking the showdown slate.
Do you not want to talk about every single game?
No, I think we're just talking about feature.
Main slate, and we'll do separate shows for the.
Yeah, for the showdown.
All right, then we start off with, I think, one of the more stackable games, Atlanta Falcons, Minnesota Vikings, 48 total. We've got the Atlanta Falcons at +3.5. This is, I think, we might come through some ugly games here in the next 3 or 4 games, so enjoy this one. What are your guys' thoughts? I know Diggs has been in the back channels, one of our favorite cash game considerations, one of our really favorite plays on the slate, but I think I saw him pop up on the injury report now, so this is sort of a pivotal game with a lot of news to break.
Yeah, this game's pretty interesting from a stackable situation. If you want to be contrarian, it's not going to be one of the top 4 games. It'll probably be the least owned of the top 4 games. For me, Devontae Freeman's going to see a pretty significant workload. He's at 5K. Obviously, the matchup isn't great, but he's definitely someone who's in play. Like Julio, especially at lower ownership than what we're accustomed to. Always like him when he's lower owned, so I'm fine with that. Minnesota side, the coach speak, I really didn't like it. They just want to pretty much, they say they want to run the ball, so that's great for Dalvin, who's obvious chalk, but Diggs and Thielen, well, I think they're good plays in cash. In tournaments, I don't know. If it's something I would just probably roster one of the two. Plant your flag. John, what about you?
Yeah, I think Dalvin Cook will probably be the heaviest owned running back on the slate. For good reason. He's super cheap, like Bob said. They're going to run the football. That's no secret. And we know how Atlanta has always struggled with pass catching running backs. And for the games that Dalvin Cook did play, he has a pretty safe floor of about 3 to 5 targets. So I actually like Dalvin Cook quite a bit. He'll probably be one of my cash game running backs. And then, like you said, Thielen and Diggs, I would suggest planting your flag one or the other unless you're multi-entering. But I'm on the Thielen side. Started off super hot last week. He's too cheap, only 6,800 this week. Like the matchup, like the target share. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think for me, I couldn't agree more with planting your flag, mostly because I think this team is going to want to run the ball a lot. Do you guys think that because their plan is to do something that we know is very suboptimal in the modern NFL, that just like fading this team like as an offense is like not maybe not sharp contrarian play, but in consideration? Because I don't like want to roster players on bad teams, and you know what bad teams do a lot? They run the ball regardless of what's going on.
No, I'm 100% with you. I think with the coach speak, like I don't love Cousins in this situation at all. If it's either one of Thielen or Diggs, and then like if I'm stacking, I'm probably just I don't know if I'm like, I don't even know if I love Ryan. I think if you like Ryan, you're with Hooper and Julio, or even Calvin's going to be pretty low owned. But my favorite like kind of situation in this game would be Julio and running it back with Dalvin, and that it would just be a 2-man stack for me.
Yeah, for me, this is one of the games that will be like the second stack of my lineup. But because
Yeah,
of the Vikings being they seem stupid and dumb and bad and they don't want to throw all the time, which is what you should do. And then the better offense that I really am interested in, the Falcons, they are leaving home. So you've got the home team is not the team I want to be on, and I playing away quarterbacks isn't the best process. So for me, it's pick 1 to 2 guys and then look for your total game stack somewhere else. Let's move on to Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles, who I think we've actually got some interesting options here on the Philadelphia Eagles. They are whopping 10-point favorites, and the total here is only 45. So how do you approach this type of game where we like the Eagles? Like they're a great offense. I think I had them pulled up on the implied totals for a single team, and they were like the tied favorite on the slate, right? 27.5. Does that sound right, John?
Yeah, I think that's right. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see this game be like 24-7 or something, or like
Right? Yeah.
even with the Eagles pushing like 30 points here. I just think it's an absolute smash. I know it opened at 9. I think it's been bet up to 10. And I honestly like I know that's a huge amount to lay, especially for week one, but that's how bad I expect Washington to be. I mean clearly they're in full tank mode. They're really not offering much, especially for a good team like the Eagles. I just think the Eagles dominate, and really I think there's definitely plays on the Eagles side, but the one that I'm gravitating towards the most is the Eagles defense. They're my top defense of the week in cash games and tournaments, and really I know the price isn't super great, but with the salary savings we have at other positions, I'm okay with paying up for defense and just everything about it. I think they're going to get sacks, they're going to get pressure, and playing from ahead, Washington's going to have to throw the ball a lot. And Case Keenum dropping back 35 times, I think, is a good thing for any opposing defense. And then on top of that, Washington has always been a team that really struggled in special teams. They've been like bottom 5 for the past like decade, and so that it isn't something I weight like super heavy, but just the cherry on top that maybe Eagles get some sort of special teams touchdown as well.
yeah. The Eagles going to be like the survivor pool pick of the week, I would imagine, right? Like at that with this situation and with Washington coming into Philly. I like Ertz. I think he's if you want to go up from Henry, I think he might even be viable in cash like Wentz. Um, and then on the other side, like yeah, it's not much, but like we don't expect a high team total from Washington. Just looking at the Vegas total, but a guy like Chris Thompson, if he's in a situation where the Redskins are down, he's the only like real pass catching running back on that roster. They're not going to trust a rookie in Philadelphia, so I like Chris Thompson at 3,900. And then I like Trey Quinn in the slot as well, just as like a filler if you need to fill something. With Jordan Reed, the Eagles do well against tight ends usually. Some of those targets will be funneled to Quinn, and he's pretty cheap at 3,400.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I think the Thompson play is actually like that was one of my favorite things we've talked about was playing getting like a lot of Eagles and then just running it back with like really if it's between him and Jordan Reed for the best playmaker on the team. And if I want someone to score touchdowns, that's been Thompson basically his whole career. He's an electric playmaker, and not only that, but just like do you really trust Darius Geis or Adrian Peterson to be their receiving back when that should be all they're using if they're 10-point dogs? Like, they're going to be getting killed early on. You want the guys who are just going to rack up volume, and if you can get efficiency out of a guy like Chris Thompson, that's just the cherry on top. For me, this game is I like Zach Ertz as well, especially if we do find out that Hunter Henry is going to be like very chalky because we think he's a solid cash game play. I think a move to the Eagles running it back with Chris Thompson could be pretty sharp. Let's move on to another, actually maybe a worse game. Buffalo at New York. We've got, or is this Buffalo? This is actually Buffalo hosting New York. I don't know. My bookie doesn't really have great information, but we've got Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is 3-point dog, so actually I'm almost sure that means New York hosts. And then the total is a putrid 40.5. Makes this 45 that we just talked about look real good. Like, I honestly, I have no interest in this game. I could not care less. Unless you're like 150 entering, I don't see like, I don't see anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clearly tournament plays only, and they're kind of thin tournament plays. I'm not looking at anybody in cash. I know Lev Bell will probably get some ownership just because people see Lev Bell and they know the name, and he's only 7,100 as opposed to being priced in like the 9K back when he played for Pittsburgh. So I think some people can go there. I'm not super interested. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Bob, you play more tournaments than me. Are you looking at anybody on either side of the football here?
Not really. The only like tournament play I would think is if Kyler Murray is really chalky, Josh Allen at the same price as 5,600, so he's someone like that can be considered. I just total's too low. Like not much. I'm in like not really worth it for me. I think you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. Week one, Lev's going to garner a lot of ownership that he probably shouldn't garner in this situation, just because casuals see Lev and they roster him. So don't roster Lev and move on to the next game.
Hell yeah, let's get out of there. All right.
Wait. No, I do actually have a play that I like. I thought Bob was going to hit on it, but in tournaments,
Crowder.
No, John Brown is only 4,300. I think he is going to be the primary receiver in Buffalo, and we know Josh Allen isn't afraid to throw it deep, and we know John Brown's good at getting open deep, and he's only 4,300. So I actually kind of like that play a lot for tournaments just because he's so cheap, and I wouldn't be shocked if he probably be baller too.
Yeah, and he can always get behind the defense. So yeah, John Brown, I like that. That's a sharp call.
Don't make me run back to the John Brown well because I really believe he's actually a very good player. Like when you looked at him coming out of college, he was a guy who like
he is.
There was no surprise when he turned out to be a good player, and he fits the skill set of Josh Allen. Like the only true skill Josh Allen has. That's I might get on board with this, but
look
outside
what he did with Flacco last year.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I believe he was number one in air yards at like the halfway point in the season. There was 1 week where he was literally getting the most air yards per game. Like he has that insane upside on a weekly basis. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because as much as I hate this game, that's a sharp call. I won't dog that. All right, let's move on now that we have the one good play on that game out of here. Baltimore, Miami. Baltimore should also shellac them. They're 7-point favorites. Another disgusting total, 38.5. Like, do you have any interest, either of you, in maybe like the Baltimore rushing game? Because I mean that's their entire game, but like that's if they get up early, they could just run like all the time, every single play, first through third down, all the time. But that's like the only real way to leverage this game, in my opinion. Although Bobby actually had a good defensive play in this game, and it might not be who you think. So I guess, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, I can get into it. Just home dog, the Dolphins, defensive-minded head coach. Lamar Jackson sacks are up for grabs pretty much just because they run the ball so much. The one thing that does deplete is like throwing turnovers, like pick sixes. So, but at 2,100, like I could see having them in your player pool in tournaments. And then I think it's contrarian to roster the Ravens unless they're like egregious ownership and then don't play the Ravens. But if they're not that highly owned, then I think it's paying up and being different on a slate like this with the pricing being so loose might not be the worst play if you want to go there. I don't think I am. How about you, John?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is Mark Ingram is a guy that I kind of want to be on early. This could be a spot. It comes with a lot of high risk, but just because Baltimore was the most run-heavy team last season, and Mark Ingram's finally going to be the guy. I mean, Justice Hill will probably have some type of role, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ingram carry the ball 20 times, especially if they jump out to an early lead, like Kyle said. So at 5,100, I think he's a good tournament play just because he should be sub 5%. And like I said, I want to be on him early. I could see him starting to get popular after a couple weeks pass, but that's pretty much it. And then as far as for a sports betting thing, 7 is a big spread for such a low total. I don't have the historical numbers on that, but usually that's like a blind bet for me. Is anytime there's a total like under 40 with a touchdown spread. I want to say it hits at like 65% or something absurd. And don't quote me on that, but that is just something I thought was interesting because it's such a low total, so it's a lot harder to cover wide spreads in a low scoring game.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact number is either, but I can confirm that just like when teams aren't scoring a lot, 7 points as like a proportion of the total scores in the game is like incredible, as opposed to even like 10 points out of 45 for the Washington Philadelphia game. So that's a good point to make. Let's move on to one of maybe the chalkiest stacking games on the slate: San Francisco versus Tampa Bay. This is a pick'em with a 50.5 total. This is, I think, like everyone seems to be riding Chris Godwin, the hype train, and Jameis. So what do you guys think, at least in tournament, about maybe going with a lot of the Niners? Like, is that the play here, given how many people, sharp people, are going to be on Jameis and Godwin?
Yeah, I think you're going to a guy like Garoppolo, where he's definitely being overlooked in terms of like the offense that he's in. Right, he's coming off a torn ACL. He didn't play well in the beginning of the preseason. I think the last game he played all right, the game 3. I don't mind like leveraging the recency bias that Garoppolo is this terrible QB, especially when how many plays Kyle Shanahan's going to run. It's one of the faster paced games on the slate. Love Goodwin, like pairing him with Garoppolo. They have that chemistry that they had 2 years ago. Like Pettis as well, like Kittle. I think Breda is someone that I'm interested in at 4K. Tevin Coleman, I obviously like him better. But Breda is someone at 4K that I could definitely take the savings on. Don't like the fact that Mozart's in the mix. I don't know how much he's going to be. You're going to have to keep your tabs on that, but I think he's going to see some snaps. And then I like San Fran D as well. Like that would be my correlation play, I feel like. I like stacking this game up like the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I love the Marquise Goodwin call. He's only 4,000, and for a game that's likely to be a track meet, isn't Marquise Goodwin like? Didn't he like run track in the Olympics or like a sprint in the Olympics?
He'll be competing at 2020, or at least that's his plan.
Yeah, something like that. So I mean, in what should be a track meet, wouldn't you want a track superstar athlete like Marquise Goodwin? And he's just 4K. So, and all the reports about Dante Pettis have been absolutely horrible throughout training camp and preseason. So, like Bob said, I wouldn't be surprised to see 6 to 8 targets for Goodwin. And we know those targets are high value targets because they're probably going to be deep targets. And then on the flip side, just like Bob said, obviously love the Tampa Bay side. Before pricing dropped in the beginning of August, we were talking about it. And I literally said in our group chat, I'm going to be all in on Chris Godwin at 6,200. And then pricing dropped, and I was like, oh my God, he's 6,200.
Wait, did you call the price too?
Yes, to its T. And so now I'm gonna call 8 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown. I'm all in Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I actually like when we talk about guys who are higher owned, and the way to get leverage is to find like if you're going overweight on them. I think Chris Godwin might be like a sharp play just to go all in on Godwin, because I really think like I couldn't agree with you more that Godwin is the play from this side. I think he fits in the offense pretty well, and I just want to have pieces of this game. And in terms of a good one, I actually think that was a really sharp call too. He's like if John Brown was on a fun offense. Like that's what we're going to get from him. So I think that might be sort of the pivot to get a higher upside out of a similar type of player. But yeah, I think you guys are all on it. And I do like, as Bobby said, the San Francisco defense. They're 2,200. I think like the floor is like 2,100. That was Miami. And the amount of times we've seen James fumble and throw turnovers and the amount of scoring in this game, what you want in your defense is to have a moderately high total because that means more plays, more chances for turnovers. That's something like why we said that, despite the savings you get with like Miami, their points per dollar could be good, but their ceiling is so capped because there's not going to be enough plays for anything crazy to happen. We could see San Francisco score 1+ touchdowns in this game. I think they have one of the higher upsides on the slate for such an incredibly low cost. I love that. So in games where I'm in lineups where I'm not stacking this game completely, I think that's one of the sharpest things to do is just get San Francisco defense.
If you're rostering Winston, wouldn't you more likely to prefer OJ Howard in tournaments? Kyle, you talked about it the other day how the secondary receiver off of if the QB goes nuclear, it's going to be a guy like OJ Howard is probably going to come in at lower ownership that you're going to want to have in that stack because this is going to be a chalky game. So just a way to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I actually like running Godwin and Howard because I think just getting as many it's like what you're saying is that the receiver ones have a pretty similar correlation to their quarterbacks as receivers 2 do. But the correlation between their ownerships is something I was looking at today. The correlation between their ownerships, people are so much more likely to stack receiver ones with their quarterback, despite the fact that the Millie Maker winners were all running their receiver 2s with their quarterback. And the correlation in points is very similar, so you can get a lot of leverage just by you get that same upside of the correlation play, while nobody else does that. People always stack quarterback 1 or quarterback with receiver 1. So I think it's more contrarian than because we talk about it all the time. It's more contrarian than people think to run receiver 2, which in this case would be Godwin, or Howard, which is another great example.
Is it Godwin, though?
Are you saying is Godwin the second receiver on this team?
Is Godwin could be the one.
He honestly might be this year.
No,
be the one. That's what I'm saying. Is I think
we're gonna get Kyle heated.
I honestly think with the ownership, all right. So we talk ownership, bust rate, wide receiver, it's around 70%. If he's the chalkiest receiver, Godwin might be someone that you might consider fading.
I don't hate that part. I'm saying just on the team.
Is pretty much a really good play.
I don't like what you're saying about fading Godwin just because of the variance with the amount of, or at least what I take from it is that we could see Howard blow up, we could see Evans blow up. I'm just saying from the actual team standpoint, he won't out target Mike Evans this season. I bet anything on it. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, John? I think it could happen.
I think it's in the range of outcomes.
I mean, is it in the range of outcomes? Sure, a lot of exactly.
I think
it's shorter throws.
The most probable thing is Mike Evans still out targets.
Exactly.
I do think Godwin running out of the slot a lot is very valuable.
No, I'm totally on on Chris Godwin. I'm just saying in terms of my philosophy of the receiver 2, this offense's receiver 2 is still Godwin until further notice. And is it totally possible that flips this year? I'm open to that idea because I think Chris Godwin's great. But until further notice, he's still the receiver 2. Any closing thoughts on this game before we get too heated?
No, I was just going to say, the reason why we love Tampa Bay is they have no run game. That hasn't changed. They still don't have a run game. I know their running backs are cheap, but they're not good.
Mm-hmm.
I fell into the Peyton Barber trap last year, week 1, because he was so cheap and he's a starter. Newsflash, didn't work. Still not going to work. And that's why we love Tampa Bay is Winston's going to throw the ball 35, 40 times, and it's so concentrated between Evans, Howard, and Godwin. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see all 3 of them get 8 targets minimum in this game. So that's why I think it'd be pretty difficult for them to bust. But that's all I got.
I agree. Let's move on to another fun game, Kansas City versus Jacksonville. Kansas City are 3.5-point favorites, 51.5 total. This is one that I feel it won't be my main stack again because I liked the game before that we just talked about, an upcoming game. But I think you can get a lot of equity in this game out of 3 players. So what do you guys think? Is there any reason to go super deep on this game, going for LaShawn McCoy or going for Darwin Thompson, or do you feel comfortable going Fournette, Tyreek Hill, or even though Dede is really cheap, I think he's very clearly receiver 1. So in terms of price, he's low, but in terms of the volume, he's not I don't think he's a sleeper or anything. For me, he's a very clear in-play guy.
What about DJ Chark?
I mean, if you're running 150, I guess, but I really like. He's gonna be the like third receiver on the field. So if there are any times they're running 2 receiver sets, I don't think you see him out there. Wasn't very good last year coming out of college. I don't know. And I also don't think he fits with full skill set very much. So I just like. I mean, sure, is it possible that a guy with blazing speed running deep balls in a game with a lot of scoring goes off? Absolutely. I think he's not a bad, like, large player pool play, but, like, if you're only running 3,
Yeah,
20,
I'm
yeah.
talking from an MME perspective. I just think that it's kind of contrarian. Obviously, Marquise Lee's back, so he's going to cut in. So it's probably not the exact way you want to go. But I'm just trying to be different in a situation like this, just because it's a tournament. You look at obviously we can just look at the public money. Like the public money is 71% on KC, and 51% of the bet. No, 71% of the bets are on KC, and 51% of the money is on Jacksonville. So that's the sharps are hitting the Jags. The line moves. I like Fournette as a tournament play. I like the Foles stack. Dede, obviously, I think Dede's definitely a play for cash games. I think it would more look to like Foles and then running it back with like a Mahomes, Kelsey, Bill type. Like, I mean, not full. I mean Fournette and then running back with Mahomes, Kelsey. And I'm just looking at it. What are you thinking, John?
Yeah, I know we all like Dede here, but he's actually, he might be my favorite play on the entire slate. And that's saying a lot because you know how I feel about Chris Godwin, but the price, I mean, 4,800 in such a perfect spot. Like the Kansas City Chiefs gave up the most DraftKings points to all positions last season. So there's going to be points scored in this game. And obviously, I like Lenny Fournette as well with the increased passing game volume that he's likely going to see here. But the price on Dede, man, I can't get away from it. He's under 5K in such a good matchup. He's going to see targets. Looked good in the preseason. He's got a little connection going with Nick Foles. So, man, I'm going to be super overweight on Dede Westbrook. Cash tournaments, I might honestly just lock him in every format.
Yeah, Dede was someone who I kind of thought of as maybe a high variance play on this slate. But I think for me, like I'm now sort of putting him in the cash consideration as well. Like he was tournament before we really talked about this very much. Any game over 50 points, you have to look at the guys for tournaments, especially guys who will get a lot of volume. But the more I look into Dede, I really think he's a cash play. Like Bob, do you want to talk off the ledge? 'Cause I really think, especially
No,
like
I'm with you. I'm with you guys with Dede and cash. Like,
yeah.
When I was bringing up Chark, I'm just talking.
No, for sure.
From an MME perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like him, Watkins, Hardman, those guys, like in this situation, you're trying to figure out just because of how highly total this game is. Like everyone complained about how lax DK's pricing was for week one. It's kind of always been that way. But for me, like I feel like this is pretty interesting because you have the highest total game, and you have a road favorite coming in against a home dog. The line's already moved. Like I feel like this is a game to target because you're gonna get low ownership. So like those guys on the outside, if I'm stacking, like that's why I'm trying to figure out who that guy is going to be, and if I want to actually stack up this game because we talked about secondary wide receiver. Like who's the other guy in Jacksonville? I want to know that. Who's the other guy in Kansas City? I guess we all think it's Watkins, but if you're building 150, you're taking the chance on Hardman. These are all things that I'm just going through my head at once.
Yeah, I like the second guys on KC more, and I think Watkins will end up being kind of popular because of the mindset that you have, which is not like wrong at all. It's that you want to find the more contrarian plays. Like people know Travis Kelce is a good play. I think people are going to be sharp to Leonard Fournette in some sense. McCole Hardman is actually that guy for me. I think he was incredible in preseason. It's preseason, I get it, but he looks like a guy who could put up do what Curtis Samuel did last year, where he doesn't get a ton of volume at any time he touches the ball. You can't focus on him because there are so many other plays, like so many other players on this team. He's got the best quarterback in the league. Like I think his touchdown upside on any given slate is going to be a lot better than his cost would tell you.
Can we correlate Jacksonville D with Fournette in this game? At 2,300, would you be willing to go there?
No, do you want to just give me your money instead? I'll invest it for you. It's fine.
I get that.
I actually don't think
2,300. I don't think it's a bad play at all.
I mean, I think high total game, Mahomes will be dropping back. I think there are better plays out there.
Yes.
For sure.
No, definitely.
multi-entering is definitely in the player pool.
And that's why I brought up Chark as well, because I think Chark's taking kicks back for Jacksonville, so he would be another guy that you can kind of throw in that stat. I'm just going through every correlation I can possibly think of within that game. Um, the other thing is I know Kyle's definitely gonna hate this. 2 tight ends. I know it doesn't hit. I know it doesn't hit. But Kelsey, Kittle, these last 2 games we talked about, I just think it's not the worst play. This could be the week.
I mean, there are dumber plays than 2 tight ends. It's minus EV. I don't think it's like the donkey brain.
EV, I get it.
I don't think it's the donkey brainest thing to do.
Eventually, it's gonna hit at some point. At some point within the next 100 millionaire makers, it'll hit.
I wouldn't bet you against on that one. 100 million makers, yeah, sure.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if it was this year, honestly. And I know that's like a hot take, but I'm kind of siding with Bob here. I know because I was on Kyle's side originally because I don't double stack tight ends because, like he said, it's minus EV. But I actually like we talked about a little bit. This is like the first year since I've started playing fantasy where we have so many tight ends that are legitimately treated as a primary pass catching option. Evan Ingram, OJ Howard, Vance McDonald, Travis Kelce. There's all these guys that we've seen pop off before. It would not shock me to see. And the price is usually good. These guys are around 5K. If Ingram went for 20 points and Kelce or Ertz went for 20 points, we saw Ertz drop a 30 bomb last year. So, I mean, I think if it was ever going to happen, it would be this year or while we have this core of excellent athletic tight ends.
Yeah, I think I actually toyed around with some, I think, Bobby, you were saying this, and I think this resonated with me, is that, you just, a large part of your tournament strategy is just to get in the green and let variance carry you the rest of the way. So I think that's why making, plus EV moves is sort of that's the get yourself in the green part of the strategy. But I was even toying with Kittle Howard lamps. I thought that would be, a interesting way to attack that game. It's I don't hate it, but just,
I think tight ends are really interesting just on this slate. Just because of the pricing, week 1, everything's lax, and pricing in general, it's gonna hit eventually. I'm not saying to do it. Definitely don't go overweight on it. But there are some spots if you want to correlate things the right way, and it allows you to do that because of pricing. It's not the worst play, especially when we don't have a definite chalk low end running back.
Yeah, Rip Pollard. All right, let's move on. Tennessee, Cleveland. We've got Cleveland, pretty big favorites, 5.5. The 45.5 is a pretty middling total. Honestly, this game for me is sort of let Chubb run all over the Titans and just don't worry about the rest. I totally think Baker and Mayfield are in play. I just don't think with all the other plays we have talked about already that they're gonna make too many of my lineups. But they're not awful plays. I think Odell has the weekly upside of pairing him with Baker is it's incredible. But for me, this just isn't the game. That's the only reason I'm not on them.
See, I'm thinking about it more just because the bets 70% Cleveland, the money 64% on the Titans. So I think that's pretty interesting and something to take note of. I honestly, when I first looked at it, and until I saw that, I really had no care for this game other than Odell's the shiny new toy, and he's going to be used. Odell's going to get in the end zone. Odell has 2 touchdown upside in this game. One thing that could be a note: Todd Monken likes to spread the ball around. Baker likes to spread the ball around, so it might cap Odell's upside. I like the Browns. Love Chubb. Think he projects great. On the other side, Dion Lewis, I think, is someone who's interesting, and also Adam Humphries at 4K. John, where are you going?
Yeah, I think you actually stole my thunder there. This game really kind of scares the hell out of me, and the reason being is, like you said, 70% of the bets are on Cleveland, and the line actually moved in Tennessee's favor. So what are we missing here? Because looking at it, I'm like, Cleveland's gonna roll, and then I'm seeing that, and I'm like, is this just gonna be a massive Derrick Henry game when nobody plays him? I don't know. It just scares me. Or maybe Justin's boy, Corey Davis, pops off. I don't know. I really don't want to play any Titans, but the line movement is definitely concerning. I do like Odell, obviously, one of the best talents in the NFL. Tennessee struggled man-to-man coverage last couple seasons. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went off. And then, like you said, obviously love Nick Chubb, 6,400. He's in the cash game consideration as well.
Did you guys think the Titans will be a contrarian play on this slate? Like, do you think people will be on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to
Yeah.
play.
This game really sucks, to be perfectly honest, because you have to consider it now, just with the line, with the sharp money. Rashard Higgins is another guy who's in play. We're talking about a secondary receiver. If you don't want to go Jarvis Landry, I don't know, man. The Titans secondary is so bad, dude. So like, it's just a tough situation to kind of, because I didn't want to have to deal with this game, and now I feel like you have to. And Odell's just fringe cash. You just have to figure out what to do with Odell too if you're playing cash games.
Yeah, I think for me, this will be a really interesting one to revisit on our Sunday morning show to see if if there's any reverse line movement or not. But I think for now, we can move on because this is one we might get more clarity, or at least we have to start making decisions in the upcoming days. So I think by Sunday morning, we'll know what we want to do with this one. Let's move on to my favorite.
Sorry, just real quick. The only thing I was going to say was the only play that I actually do have interest in on the Titans side is Delaney Walker. Everything that I've seen says he's fully healthy. He's only 3,500, and we all know how badly Cleveland struggles against the tight end position for the past like 5 seasons. And with Hunter Henry and these other guys garnering so much of the tight end ownership, I think Delaney Walker could be a guy who flies under the radar. And if Tennessee's going to keep it close, it's going to be through Derrick Henry or Delaney Walker or a combination of both.
Yeah.
Do you think Johnny will cut in at all? Sorry, Kyle. Johnny Smith, if he's
Who?
I don't.
No.
I was just.
No, I mean, it's worth asking because he was a guy who people were, as soon as Delaney Walker went down, it was supposed to be the Johnny show, and it turns out he sucks.
Yeah.
So
I haven't paid attention to the Tennessee Titans in about 5 years.
I don't blame you. It sounds awful. All right, let's keep it moving. We got a bunch more games to cover. This is the game of the slate for me. It's LA Rams, Carolina Panthers. We've got the Rams are 3-point favorites, 50-point total. What are you guys doing with this one? Is it just all of the players play the guys?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, everyone's a really good play in this game. Cam, Curtis Samuel. Run CMC is probably my favorite spend-up running back.
Yep.
He's the only spend-up running back for me.
Yep.
I'm not interested in Barkley. Like, who are the top running backs? Barkley, Zeke. The talk of him getting a very limited amount of reps, it was like 20 to 25, and I took that as snaps, was a bit concerning to me. So for me, it's CMC and the rest in terms of paying up for a running back on this slate. You were gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say figuring out the Rams is pretty important.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about spend up running backs. We have Todd Gurley at 7,900. What is he? Like, we don't know. At 7,900, he's a good play. Last year, without arthritic knees, now he has arthritic knees coming off a Super Bowl where he wasn't involved at all. Casuals will click the button. Todd Gurley. It's going to be interesting to see where his ownership is. I like the idea of running it back with him in tournaments if you stack up the Panthers side. And then my favorite receiver would be Cooper Kupp, and I think he's on a pitch count now, so I'm not really sure. John, do you have anything?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say I'll be at this game, so I'm super excited. Week 1, if anybody's there, let's grab a beer. But also, basically, with the Christian McCaffrey thing, shout out to Matt Friedman. He actually put up a tweet earlier today about McCaffrey's home road split. And I'm just going to read it real quick. At home, he averaged almost 5 points per game more than away games. And then in losses, he actually averaged 8 more points per game than in wins. So Carolina is a home dog. So he's averaged nearly 28 points per game in those situations. And a lot of times I ignore stuff like that, like the home road stuff. But for him, it makes sense. Playing from behind, he is their primary pass catching option. So if this game is going to be a track meet, and if Carolina is going to be playing from behind, he's obviously the top play on the board for me. And then the other thing I was going to say is with such a high total, somebody else from Carolina has got to put up points. And Curtis Samuel, 4,200. He's obviously a great play at that price, and DJ Moore is only 55. So I think that's a decision that has to be made. I think DJ Moore is going to be considerably lower owned than Curtis Samuel. which makes me like him more than Samuel in tournaments. But I definitely like a combination of all of those guys and even some Greg Olson in tournaments as well.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the DJ Moore Curtis Samuel thing for me because you guys kind of talked me into Curtis Samuel. The value there, just on a like the dollar spent per touch basis, is going to be really good. But everybody seems to be on Curtis Samuel. Like you look at like redraft, his ADP is crushing it. You look at Twitter, all the sharps seem to be like touting Curtis Samuel. Whereas like I'll just like I don't have that much confidence that he will. In fact, I really think DJ Moore is going to shine this week. So for me, it's just like fade the high ownership guy and high ownership receivers, as we've talked about, generally tend to bust pretty hard. Like they're not the ownership doesn't correlate very well to points. So for me, I still want a ton of pieces of the Carolina side of this game. So I'll just fade the public. And Bob, I want to get your opinion on this. I think my theory on the Todd Gurley ownership is that he is going to be, like you said, highly owned, but mostly among not as sharp people, whereas his ownership will come down the higher stakes you go. So for me, I don't know if you were thinking about playing him because you're playing the highest stakes out of all three of us. Uh, you are not competing with dumb people, to be blunt. Like the people who run Todd Gurley will probably have bad lineups elsewhere. If you think, even if you think he's a good play, does that make sense?
Yeah, so no, I get that a ton. Like that was pretty much my thought process in the Masters. Like I wanted to have Tiger because I figured no one who was playing high stakes would have Tiger. They're all pretty much spent on playing Tigers, and I hadn't played him, so I just kind of took the shot. Um, like in terms of
Worked out
Todd
pretty
Gurley,
well
like
too.
yeah, it worked out actually. Yeah, that's another. I didn't. The one lineup I had him in high. I had him in a lot of stuff, but I didn't have him in the $1,500 and that I end up winning. I would have did better if I had him.
Oh, I
'Cause
thought he was in that one. My bad.
no, I had him in the millie. And then I had him like in a like 333. Um, yeah. So basically, for me, like I think Gurley's good in game stacks. Like that's where I would kind of try to get my allocation to him. Just because we don't know about Cooper Cup, like we know how good of an offense this Rams team is, but we don't know where the value is going to come. So figuring that out's very important. Guy like Gerald Everett at 2,900 in MME isn't someone like I'd be afraid to shy away from, especially if Cup's on a pitch count. Not going to have a ton of exposure, but like it's not going to take much to be over the field. And like I think this is the game that there are a lot. This is a game that I probably most like stacking, and I love the DJ Moore call you made, Justin. When everyone's kind of going Samuel, and then pivoting to Moore. I mean John. I'm sorry, not Justin.
Justin would never make that sharp of a call. Not in his life.
I was gonna let it slide. I was gonna let it slide.
Yeah. I was talking to Justin all day today. Just whatever.
I'm so sorry. That sounds awful. All right, so that's Cooper Cup though is something he's underpriced on every like you can't find a place where he's not underpriced relative to Cooks and Robert Woods. So he's a guy who the pitch count is something I want to keep an eye on. That's something we'll revisit Sunday. Let's move on to Detroit, Arizona. It is 2.5 favorite Detroit and 46.5 total. What do you guys make of like the greatest offense in the NFL getting started now?
John, that's all you want to just hop into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be like a make or break game, like on the slate. Like, obviously when pricing first dropped, everybody's like, Kyler Murray's going to be 100% owned. He's only 5,600. And then we proceeded to see them look like absolute garbage in the preseason. And I know it's the preseason, and that's why I'm like not one of those people that's just counting out Arizona's offense already. But it did give me a little bit of concern considering I was already kind of wondering if he was as good of a play as everyone else seemed to think, just because Arizona does have the offensive line struggles. Detroit has a strong pass rush. First game, rookie quarterback. I know he's at home, but it's really, if he wasn't so cheap, he wouldn't even be in consideration for me. But I'm just curious, have you guys moved off of him? Or what are you doing as far as Kyler Murray goes? And really, he's the only guy I have interest in on Arizona. And then on Detroit side, I want to play on Johnson. I still kind of do, but the lack of third down work is definitely concerning. So that would restrict him to just tournament plays. But that's pretty much it for me. So I'm kind of just, I don't know how to feel about this game. And so I was curious what you guys think.
Yeah, I very much circled to where you are, where the Lions cut Theo Riddick, and I was like, well, carry on Johnson lock week, let's just get it going. Then the talk came out that he might lose goal line work, and then they signed J.D. McKissick to basically fill the Theo Riddick role. So third down work, he could be a guy who gets stuck between the 20s, gets a lot of yards, and doesn't score, and that's like the uber capped upside of a player. So like that, I came down from that high quickly. I still think Kyler at his price is a great play. I think he could have a lot of rushing equity, and I'm more interested in running him back with Christian Kirk than it seems like you are. But that's really mostly a tournament play. For me, I similarly have sort of come down on this game, and it's mostly because I think LA Carolina is just that's going to be where a lot of the good plays come from. So I've sort of moved off of needing to pay down for Kyler and then needing to stack him with Christian Kirk. So for me, it's a interesting play, but it's sort of moved out of my good graces. Bob?
Yeah, I'm with the both of you. Like, I've definitely came down from this game. Galladay, Christian Kirk. I know Galladay's probably going to see a ton of targets. Marvin Jones' status still up in the air. I think it is. I'm pretty sure. No Pat Peterson, so he's someone we've seen Galladay be able to like be a wide receiver one in the slow-paced offense before. So I'm not like I think that he's someone you could go to. On the Arizona side, like it's Kirk, and that's pretty much it. Like DJ, I'm a little worried about, and Kyler as well with the rushing equity with Detroit's defensive line. Snacks Harrison's there. He always kind of shuts down that run game for the opposing team, whether it's the running back or even the quarterback. I think Russell Wilson had like one of his lowest rushing outputs on the season last year in Snacks' first game in Detroit. And that's something that I would keep in mind if you're rostering like Kyler or David Johnson. I think their rushing equity is going to take a hit in this game and the pace of this game. So that's pretty much my thoughts. I don't really love this game anymore.
Yeah.
Would you guys play him in cash? Would you play Kyler in cash?
That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah,
I don't think so at this point, but I don't know.
Yeah, I still think he's a potential cash play, but I agree. The pace that Detroit wants to run, it seems like everything they're doing is gearing themselves towards this boring run-first team, will really nullify the pace you get with Arizona. So for me, I'm kind of fading this game in terms of how high I was on earlier. All right, let's move on to Cincinnati versus Seattle. Seattle coming up on a 10-point favorite to 9.5. Pretty low total at 44. I think we've sort of calcified our interest on Chris Carson a lot. Is there a better touch per dollar value now that we don't have Pollard?
Probably not.
John, that's you.
Chris Carson's like my top running back on the slate as far as like safety cash goes. He's right up there with Dalvin Cook. He's just $300 cheaper. Love the matchup. Chris Carson, you guys know I'm a Chris Carson guy. I've been raving about him since last season. He's my highest owned running back in best ball. What more can you say? He's gonna get 20 touches here as a big home favorite. And I actually think he's going to catch more balls than I think he's going to catch a surprising amount of balls this season, and I think it starts with week one. So love Chris Carson, and then I think we kind of buried the lead. Tyler Lockett's like the only guy catching the football in this game, so I know they're going to probably jump out to a lead. So maybe he won't have to catch it as much, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Tyler Lockett get off here, and he's at a reasonable price tag as well. So in tournaments, I actually kind of really like Tyler Lockett. What about you guys?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with both Carson and Lockett. And I think there's definitely going to be extra footballs to go around in the passing game, even just with DJ Moore. Jerron Brown was just cut. So I think Lockett's viable in cash. Carson's obviously a great cash game play, very safe. With the extra usage he'll definitely see in the passing game. You don't really have to worry about Penny. And that's pretty, I think people will go to DK Metcalf, but I would just stay away, and Lockett's going to be the guy. I think Lockett's an interesting pivot off Godwin.
Yeah, I think No, I think the Lockett tournament play is actually going to be like that could be the best pivot in that price range, just because you look at how many like the touchdown upside when you're getting passes from Russell Wilson, and now he could have the nuttiest target share. Their receiving core is going to be dead. So for me in cash, it's all Chris Carson, and I really like running back with Seattle. And then in tournaments, I think Tyler Lockett has to be in the pool, if not pretty high in the pool for me, just the amount of leverage you can get.
Yeah, I hit on that Seattle D like that. This is Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, going into seeing the 12 man like with no AJ Green. It's going to be a rough day. So
Yeah,
I
and
like Seattle.
I really like the point you guys made, and I think a lot of people will go to Tyler Boyd on the Cincinnati side. So I want to see if you guys were on him, and if so, who would you prefer? Because he's in that same range as Chris Godwin. He's a little bit cheaper. Who would you guys prefer? Because I would prefer Lockett over Boyd, but I've seen Boyd get a decent amount of buzz here, being that there's no AJ Green. So just curious what you guys think.
You won't
I'm a little
find Boyd in my lineups.
What's
I'm a
that?
little scared of Boyd.
Yeah, I'm pretty. I just don't know if I see like he's in that same range with players I like so much more that I just don't know. Like this doesn't feel like the game to play him for me at all.
Kyle hit the nail on the head. He's in the same range of pretty much everyone else. The thing is, he is going to see a ton of usage, and the game script's extremely positive. But we saw last year, like he he wasn't he better with AJ Green in the lineup than he
Yeah, I
was
think
with?
that's a small sample thing, but it does just lend credence to the amount of variance I think you can get in a single game more than anything.
And also
Okay,
too, like I've seen a lot of people point that out, but you have to remember Andy Dalton missed some of those games that AJ Green missed. So really, you're
Yeah,
factoring
it
in
was it was his
Jeff
splits with Jeff
Driscoll
Driscoll is
actually
really what it
playing.
was. Yeah.
So it's like obviously he's going to put up less points with Jeff Driscoll. So I think and then like Kyle said, it's a small sample too. So I wouldn't weigh it too much. But I definitely prefer Lockett. Love Tyler Lockett.
All right, let's move to Indianapolis versus Los Angeles. This is going to be probably the most controversial one we have here because I am not. I have no interest in Jacoby Brissett because I think the values you can find on this slate don't necessitate it. But I do get the idea of like a starting quarterback at that price. Generally is not a bad call. They roughly hit 3x value. Like it's there are a lot of traps that fall in there. When you look at the distribution, it's a lot of very bad performances, but they still, on average, roughly get their value. But I think for me, I think you can find better value on this slate.
uh, no, yeah, that's pretty much. I think Brissett's like in the cash game conversation. I know that sounds crazy, but I think he is. It's been 3 years. We have Frank Wright. It's a new situation. He's been in the offense for a little while now since the sample size that we had previously. I don't think I'm going to go there, but I just think he's in the conversation. That's all I wanted to say. John, what about you?
I mean, you guys already know how I feel about it. And it's like Kyle said, like I just don't think like there's so much value on this slate that it's just an unnecessary risk. And like even if there wasn't, I still wouldn't be like all in on him. I just think it's a tough spot, away against a good defense. And I really am not sold on how good he is. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's a good quarterback, and I don't think he has the volume. We've seen, and I know it's a new team, but like in previous games when Andrew Luck was out, we've seen him only throw the ball 25 times, top 200 in like half of his games. So I just don't think the volume per se might be there. I think it might be just like they try to run the ball with Marlon Mack and kind of play that game, play keep away. But I don't know. I just think for week one, I wouldn't go there. I'm actually more interested in the Chargers side in Austin Eckler. He's 5,500, and with so many of other popular running backs in that range, I think he's going to go overlooked, and that could be a mistake. I think he should definitely be in the player pool, especially for tournaments. He's a guy that's averaged I think what is it? Point. I forget the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but he averages quite a bit of passing game volume when he's active, and Melvin Gordon isn't. So I think Justin Jackson will be involved, but not enough to take away significant uses from Austin Eckler. So he's my favorite play in this game. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, for me, the only player I'm super interested in is Hunter Henry. He's going to be our favorite cash game tight end in the slate. And I even think at like lower stakes, it might just be advantageous just to go overweight on him in tournaments too. Like I think he is just easily the best tight end of the slate in terms of the value you get out of him. So for like lower stakes, I just have no problem locking him in all formats. But I think the Eckler point is pretty on point there, given that he is a guy who, when Melvin Gordon's out, just racks up volume, and you might not expect it from a guy of his stature, but like they don't seem to care. They just don't care. And he's an incredibly efficient guy, so I think he is, and like you said, I don't think he'll get the hype he deserves because I think Justin Jackson will keep that well tempered, and I don't think it will be deserved of him getting no hype. So I think that's not a bad play. I'm not going to have any of the Colts. I think they're going to go to Los Angeles and probably get crushed.
I think you guys made two really good points. Eckler, Henry, especially like Henry with Gordon out. I think he definitely, like we all know, he's pretty much egregious chalk, but he sees a lot of targets. He's going to see those targets that Gordon would likely see at the goal line, or see somewhat of like carryover from Gordon not being there. Obviously, Mike Williams is in the mix now, so that changed things up. But there's no Antonio Gates. I think this game. I wonder which way like the money's trending on the total, because I think this game could go over. I don't think it's like a natural away game. Like they're going to L.A. It's not really like the Chargers have been in LA for what, a year. Like it's not a real home game. That was the other thing with Brissett, is like it's not. I feel like it's not. It's more of a neutral setting than what we think.
It is more of a neutral setting than going to like Seattle or whatever. Another, like, going to West Coast is hard, but if you're going to go to the West Coast, just in terms of venue, like they play in the soccer stadium or whatever, and they don't have any fans in the stadium. It's like they basically lost their home field advantage. I think it's a bad matchup defensively, but I agree. It's like going to the Chargers is not like, you're not really going to the Chargers. You're playing a neutral stadium almost. So that is a totally fair point to be made.
What do we got up next?
All right, we have one more game on the main slate, I believe. We just have New York versus Dallas. Zeke signs his $10 billion deal. They've sunk their franchise, but is he in play? Because I think this is sort of an interesting, could be contrarian depending on how you interpret the 20 to 25 reps news, and how you, like, this matchup would be great. Like, he will run all over New York if it's the normal setting, but this isn't a normal setting. So do you have any interest in Zeke? That's kind of, I'm interested in this.
Absolutely not for me. It's like I said before, if I'm paying up, it's for Chris McCaffrey. I just think the floor and ceiling is higher. And even if you're going away from Chris McCaffrey, I think there's better plays based on volume and upside. Zeke, no training camp, and I know the reports were like, oh, he's in the best shape of his life, whatever. That's great, but them already coming out and saying he's not going to get the full complement of snaps. Tony Pollard looked good in the preseason, and it's the Giants. Like, let's be honest, they're probably going to roll in this game. So I just don't see them leaning on Zeke, with little to no preparation for Sunday. And then he's priced as the highest. So I would rather go Saquon up there, Christian McCaffrey. I would play pretty much anybody over Zeke this week.
I'm with you too, John. Like I see no reason to play him. Like a lot of that talk is pretty much because they want to get him a contract, like stuff like that. Like, they want to get his dollars up. They knew he was getting a contract. Then we have like Jerry Jones speak where he's saying, "Oh, like we want him ready for the playoffs." Like week 1 with how Pollard played in the preseason, like it doesn't make a lot of sense to play Zeke if they want him ready for the playoffs like earlier in the year. So. I'm not on Zeke. I think, like you said, McCaffrey looks like the guy to spend up for on this slate.
Yeah, I think I'd be at least more interested in Zeke if there wasn't McCaffrey, but I think McCaffrey is just I am so fine locking him not only because of, but I think the splits you said are very pertinent to McCaffrey in terms of like him being a dog is not a problem, but being at home is always good for a running back. I think he's gonna eat this week. And I think Zeke, normally I don't mind if, like in years past, I would not have minded that it'd be a good thing for him to be running all over his opponents in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure we see that anymore. Like maybe the rest of this year because they have so much confidence in Pollard. So I think Zeke's days of getting all the carries like third, fourth quarter when they're beating up bad teams could be done.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. What do you guys think about Saquon?
I think Saquon's in play. Again, if I'm paying up, it's for CMC, but it really depends on how many lineups I'm making. And for me, it's usually around 10 or so. And if that's the case, then maybe I sneak Saquon into one, but majority of the time I'm going to go CMC or I'm going to go the cheap 5K, 6K range of running back. My preferred play and one of my favorite tournament plays on the entire slate is actually Evan Ingram. I hit on it a little bit earlier. I'm big on Evan Ingram just in general this season. But also just because I know Eli Manning is terrible, but the volume is so concentrated on this offense, it's literally going to be Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram. Like I know Golden Tate will be back after the suspension, and I know Sterling Shepard's there, but make no mistake about it, Evan Ingram's the guy here, and he's only 4,800. Great pivot off of OJ Howard and off of the chalky Hunter Henry. So